A private organization has launched a statewide campaign to improve the odds of success for minority-led charters. What should parents shopping for a charter school look for in any school? We'll talk about both next on Black Issues Forum. Hello, welcome to Black Issues Forum. I'm Deborah Holt-Noel. Thanks for joining us. With the cap on public charter schools now lifted, a private organization has launched a statewide campaign to improve the odds of success for minority-led charters. This move intends to benefit would-be minority leaders in the long run, but what can these schools' potential student bodies expect in the short run? The answer to this question may be increasingly visited as more parents consider charter schools for their children. And today's guests have great experience to lend to the conversation. Let's get started. I'd like to introduce Darrell Allison, President of Parents for Educational Freedom in North Carolina. Rodney Ellis, Vice President of North Carolina Association of Educators, and Simon Johnson, Chief Executive Officer of Quality Education Academy in Winston-Salem, a charter school that recently won the distinction of Honor School of Excellence. Congratulations on that, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much. We were excited about doing that, and our ambition is to continue to do that and to move forward with a consistency in that for our school. And that's important not only for us as an individual, but also for minority schools.
Well, today's discussion is inspired by the disappointing news that many minority-led charter schools are actually failing. Darrell, share with us how serious the issue is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that many of our minority-led charter schools are failing. What I'll say to you, Deborah, is that we don't have enough of them, particularly when we look at the achievement gap challenges in many of our urban districts as well as our rural. What are we going to do for those children, Latino, African American, Native American, so that they too can have access to a quality option? When you look at the 40,000 children that are currently educated in our public charter schools, only 27% of them are children of color. And so what we want to make sure in our organization, we support the ideal of public charter schools, but one of the things I always like to say is that we want quality charter schools. That's the end of the day, that's what we're out, because at the end of the day, it doesn't make a difference if a child is in a public charter school or a traditional school. If that school is severely lacking, we all lose, the family, the child, the family, and that community. And so there's some things that we're looking at and making sure on the front end that we can better ensure success on the trajectory for those minority leaders across the state that endeavor to start a charter school.
I'd like to get back to the point about minority-led charters not succeeding at the rate that we'd like to see them succeed. Simon, can you talk a little bit about what the rate of success is or the rate of failure?
Well, in recent years, I think there's reasonable parity between the minority-led charter schools and other schools. Minority-led charter schools have a great disadvantage usually in terms of startup. And what happens is, typically speaking, a group of concerned citizens start a school, and they usually try to start it small, something they can get their arms around and manage. But unfortunately, the cost for startup is heaviest on the front end. And so what you find is they find themselves engaged in trying to make ends meet more than they do in terms of focusing on the student needs and student achievement. Because we don't have alternative resources, as many other majority schools do, then this must be borne out by the individuals in the school, either to go out and try to raise funds or to suffer because of lack of funds. And so that contributes to what some of us call that failure rate. But I think minority schools with the resources we have and the startup costs of starting a school do a tremendous job in terms of being able just to survive the first 2 or 3 years and then show some progress and a trend of going upwards from there.
Now, Rodney, the NCAE did not support the lifting of the cap on charter schools. Did that have anything to do with concern over the rate of success of charter schools?
Well, certainly that's one of the factors. We did do some research and we realized that many of the charter schools were not performing at the level that we like to see them perform. And I guess our greatest fear was the possibility that you would have charter schools just springing up all over the state with no accountability, nobody providing the oversight necessary to make sure that these schools are actually being successful.
So,
yeah, I'd like to add to that, and along with what Mr. Johnson was sharing, there is some data. Of the 33 charter schools that's been shut down since 1996, almost 40% of them were minority-led. And when we mean by minority-led, Deborah, we're not only talking about the leader of that school being of color, and again, not just Afro-American, but Latino, Native American, but also that the school board, the charter school board is mostly majority minority as well. And when you look at the fact that of the 33 charter schools that were shut down in 1996, some folks get alarmed by that. I say that's not too bad because, again, if they're not up to par, they need to be shut down. Nearly 40% of those schools were minority-led. When we contacted the Department of Public Instruction and asked the reasons, what are the top 3 reasons why these schools failed, if you will: financial accountability, the lack of sufficient board governance, and real lack of a strong strategic long-term plan. And so my thought is, in order for us to remedy that if we can begin to focus in on those critical areas, along with Mr. Johnson was sharing, along with making sure that we have the right leadership, a dynamic leader in the school leading it, a good governing board surrounding that dynamic leader in those communities, whether it be rural, urban, then we'll see a better success rate, I believe, across our state, and take advantage of this opportunity that's been afforded us with the elimination of cap on public charter schools.
well, with the startup costs being one of the major obstacles, challenges, how are you suggesting startups get around that?
Well, I can tell you that we were very excited, and we have partnered with a national social venture capital fund. The name is Partners for Developing Futures. We just finished a statewide tour of 4 cities where this national organization, just for the issues that we just shared, they look nationally. It's not only here in the state. We have over 5,000 charter schools across our nation, and they've seen that trend, that in those areas that need options the most for families, low income, most minority, they've seen this issue here on the front end. And so this Social Venture Capitalist Fund has decided to look at North Carolina and be of assistance on the front end, identifying a great dynamic school leader, make sure that we equip them with the right board development and strategic planning, and provide that necessary startup funding, significant funding. And since the last 2 years that they've been in existence, they've given millions of dollars across the nation. And so we're very fortunate to have them partner with us. And so again, our hope is to get the information out, bring those type of leaders together, businessmen, because public charter schools, you need to be business minded as well as education, ABCs 1, 2, 3s. You got to be mindful of the dollar. Bring together the legal assistance that you need, and bring those educators around the table. We think that along with the startups financial support that a charter school needs, we think that helps along the way.
Simon, I want to get you in here again to talk about what were I imagine you faced the same challenges that any startup would. How did you get around it to become an honor school of excellence?
Well, of course, naturally that comes from just having an excellent staff of people to work with. And that occurs over time. You know, we didn't instantly start off as an honor school of excellence. It was through years of work and recruiting the right people and bringing the right people into the arena, and then having proper training for them. Again, all of that is tied to financing, or the lack of financing, the rate that you can do that, and how well you can do that. And so we were fortunate in a number of cases to reach out and get some financing through grants and such areas as that. And I'm just delighted to see what Darrell and his organization are doing to provide that first financing, because the first year of charter schools, we did not receive any funds until the middle of October. And so we had staff working on faith that they would be paid.
Well, that sort of brings up the issue of the fact that, well, yes, you need this time to start up, and any business would, but the clients who are coming through are the children of citizens, and everybody wants the best education for their child. So what's happening to the quality of education for these kids who are coming through while the charter schools are working out their kinks?
Well, I think in the areas that you're talking about, there was a study that was performed and it talked about the top 28 things that contributed the most to student learning. And those types of things are sort of secondary. The most important thing in terms of a child learning is the type of teacher that's in the classroom with that child. And so when you work on that, that's something that you can work on. Have a fairly level playing field in that in terms of the financial aspect of that, because most charter schools have to pay a competitive salary for teachers just as traditional public schools do.
Rodney, is this something, I don't know if you're familiar with the top 28 items, but what is it that the NCAE would say that parents need to be looking for as they examine charter schools as an option for their children?
Well, I think you have to start first by looking at the school success rate on the AYP. I think you have to also check into the teacher turnover rate, because when you find a lot of teachers leaving the school each year, there's got to be some problems there. And so I would want to see a school or parents would need to look for a school where the staff has been in place for a number of years and they continue to work with the students and continue to see growth and development academically in the students. I think you need to look for community support and find out what the community is doing to back that school, because I think in any school, period, be it traditional public schools or public charter schools, I think that you have to have the community support, the parental involvement to make sure that those students are going to get every opportunity they can to succeed.
How is community support measured? How do you investigate that?
Well, you look at the active involvement of members of the community in terms of local businesses that may come out and either offer funding to help support the school or manpower, any of those things that the business community can provide for the school, partnerships in helping them work out any issues or challenges that the school may have. For example, you have a school that does not have playground facilities or something. You might partner with a local recreation center that does have those playground facilities so that the students can go and get the physical exercise that they need. So I think that there's a huge value to having the community support in terms of the businesses, in terms of the local churches, and anything in the community that could help support the education of the students there.
So it really takes that parent doing some homework.
Yes, it
does. That's correct. That's correct.
Before their child has to do that homework.
That's right. That's right. And when you look at the fact of a public charter school, unlike your traditional schools, typically, parents choose that school, right? In our traditional system, you're pretty much zoned to that school. And so you have, I don't care if that parent is wealthy, middle class, or low income. The parents that are deciding to attend quality education academy there in Winston-Salem, despite their income, they have a mindset. They've done that research. They've heard and listened around the community. And again, we're talking about a school at the highest level that you can be granted in the state of North Carolina. Word gets out, word of mouth. You have rumors and the negative talk, but the reverse of that happens, right? That when we hear about successes happening, people flock to that. People go to that. You do the investigation, and that's one of the byproducts, I believe, of allowing for the elimination of the cap on public charter schools. Not that public charter schools are more superior, but all of us can understand that one size, one way does not adequately address all the issues that our children face. And so by providing another option, we want to make sure it's a quality option. The more quality options that our children have, our families have on the table to best provide education for their children, we believe all boats rise on the tide.
Well,
I think it's real important to focus on the things that actually make a difference in student achievement. And I think a lot of time we're distracted by things that have sort of become buzzwords and terms that we use. I don't remember all of the things on the top 28 list, but I remember number 28 and I remember the top 5 or 6. Number 28 that had the least effect was district demographics. That is what race the child is in, the socioeconomic background the child comes from, and all of those things that we constantly talk about as reasons for children failing. The child is the least reason for failing. The greatest reason for student failure is the classroom teacher and how well that classroom teacher is prepared and how well the administrators work to bring continuous improvement to instructional delivery. So it's important that we focus on things that make a difference and not just on things that are popular sayings.
Well, in that same vein, Darrell was saying that it was important to have more minority-led schools. How do you evaluate, or how do you make that statement when what's important is that there are quality teachers in the classroom? Why does it matter, or how much does it matter that they are minority-led schools?
Look, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to, be a minority-led school in order for a child that's of color to learn adequately. What I am saying, look at the statistics. Of the 40,000 families, children that are educated in public charter school, only 27% of them are minorities. Of the 100 charter schools that currently exist in North Carolina, only 28% of them are leaders of schools that are led by minorities. And when we look at the fact, Deborah, that only 47 counties encompasses those 100 charter schools, we're talking about 53 counties that do not have a charter school. Those are people, whether it be rural or urban. And so what I say is a real disadvantage, right? When we say that this is an opportunity for all children, and that's not necessarily the case. When we're talking about starting a charter school in a low-income district, and when we're talking about starting a charter school in a rural county where the resources aren't necessarily there, it's critical. It's critical that we find a way to where, again, we can provide this option. Why is it that a child that may happen to be in Charlotte has 13 public charter schools as well as traditional schools to pick from, but a child in Halifax County doesn't have that option? Again, the more quality options that are on the table for our children, the better the chances for success. And so it's critically important, right, that we have the teachers in the classroom, but also we have to take in those considerations as well, and so that we can strategically take advantage of this opportunity for all of our children, particularly our children of color.
Simon?
They're not really separated things. They're distinctly tied together. When you start, for example, in anything, there's a strategy for wherever you are. If a coach is coaching a team, no matter what the sport, there's a strategy for when you are leading, and there's a strategy for when you are behind. Well, typically speaking, minority students are behind. The achievement gap shows this. So there's a strategy that needs to be implemented in order to close that gap and supersede that gap when possible, as we did. And that strategy needs to come from people who are sensitive to what it means to be behind and what it takes to catch up and to exceed the gap. If you're dealing with people in leadership who've always been in the lead, and their constituents have always been in the lead, there's a greater possibility that sensitivity is not there. And so those children and that quality teacher that I'm talking about in that classroom is selected by the leaders of the school, directly or indirectly. And so they tie together in that then when the leadership of the school is led, of a minority school is led by minorities, then they are sensitive to the needs that it takes to catch up and what it takes to catch up and to exceed in achieving.
Rodney, what would you say to that?
I think he's hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think it is important that we have folks in the schools who can relate to the population of the school and who understand the challenges they faced and who are able to provide the type of leadership and guidance that the students need.
Now, are the criteria, the qualifications of educators within public charter schools the same as for non-charter schools?
Well, no, I think that the state has a requirement that 75%, and I think that's in elementary school, if I'm not mistaken.
Unlicensed.
Are licensed educators, and then 50% in the high schools. So there is a little difference, but as I reviewed the statistics, most of the charter schools throughout the state are actually at or above at least 70% of the staff being certified staff. So, yeah.
So the money makes a big difference.
It does.
That startup.
It does. And to the achievement gap, it's really important. You know, again, nobody's just beating the drum to say bring on more public charter schools for public charter schools' sake. 2001, when you look at the performance of white students in 2001, 84%, and when you group that number of children of color, Native American, Latino, and Afro American, there was a 24% gap achievement difference. Fast track 10 years to 2010, we put millions of dollars to try to shorten that gap up. We came up with a number of different programs, new names. In 2010, that gap not only remained, but it increased to 28%. From 24% to 28% for those children of color, those kids, those families of color. The situation has worsened. And so when we talk about public charter schools, along with what Rodney's saying in terms of, no, they don't necessarily have to have the same teacher certification, these public charter schools need to be flexible. These schools are flexible, more flexible than our traditional schools. They're more in tune with the community because it is a community of leaders that are starting that public charter school. And I believe that done right, with the right resources, the right leaders at the helm, we will begin to chip away at that achievement gap, just as what Mr. Johnson has been able to do in Winston-Salem. And we hope that now we've eliminated the cap on public charter schools, he has mind to spread some of that wealth in these other counties. We got 53 counties, Mr. Johnson.
How about it? He's not talking.
We certainly want to help wherever we can, and really the whole purpose, one of the original purposes of charter schools when they started, I remember distinctly, was the fact that charters would serve as a laboratory from which traditional public schools could draw the best out of charter schools. And now I think that we need to, likewise have an exchange going both ways, where we draw the best out of traditional public schools and they draw the best out of charter schools. And I'm happy to, to be on this show with Rodney here because he's in a leadership position for the largest education organization in the state. And certainly, if we can come to some terms and understanding, and his organization and Darrell's organization, then that's a step in the right direction.
How is the exchange? Is there a strong communication network going on between public schools, and I know that charter schools are also public schools, but is that exchange, that positive exchange actually happening? And if it's not, what would strengthen it? What would help it?
I don't think that right now that that we have the collaborative effort that we need right now. I think that if there are things that are effective at improving the quality of education, things that are effective at increasing the achievement level of students, that it should be shared between both schools, whether it's a charter or a public school, or, whether it's a public charter school or a traditional public school. I think that we can work together to share ideas and share strategies that are proven successful in our classrooms. And I think we need to do more of that because we all have one objective, and that is to see that the students are succeeding. And I think that the more people we can bring to the table to have these discussions that are going to help us get to that level, then I think that the better off our students will be, the better off our communities and our parents will be.
Absolutely.
We've got just about a minute left, but what's the holdup?
Well, no doubt. I mean, we just got out of a legislative session, and it was a lot of rancor, right? I'm so happy, Deborah, first of all, that you're doing this program and you have the likes of us on stage here, because enough of the Republican versus Democrat, enough of the traditional school versus public charter school. Now that the elimination of the cap on charter schools is here, we have to deal with it, and it's so good for us now to once and for all be able to have that free flow. Public charter schools learn from our traditional schools and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think that one of the obstacles in the past has been the misconception that NCAE was opposed to charter schools or opposed lifting the cap of charter schools, when that's not the fact at all. I think that misconception has put a block between the collaboration that we could have going between both traditional public schools and public charter schools, But now that we are at a point where we can say, look, there's no time for us to waste battling one another over who's right or who's wrong about the best strategies for providing quality education for our students. I think that we can move forward and have some very, very productive discussions, and I look forward to working collaboratively with Darrell and making sure that we can provide a quality education for every student in North Carolina, not just any particular group, not just any particular school, but every school needs to be able to be successful because these kids represent the future of this state.
Well, let us hope that indeed success is down the road for all students concerned, and I really appreciate you all three being here.
Thank you.